This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, we're on. Okay, thank you. All right, so welcome everybody. First and foremost, a very big thank you. Well, there's a lot of thank yous I have to go around tonight. Let's just explain what happened for the people that don't know what we're talking about. So we were supposed to start this class about an hour ago in a completely different location, and somebody managed to do something to the lock that would not open up the door. So we got, practically, for all practical reasons, we got locked out of our previous location. And when I got the phone call, so I tried to call the rabbis, in charge, and I wasn't able to get a hold of them. So then my whole brain was racking. Okay, where else can we go? Are we going to move to a different synagogue nearby? And I was thinking about making the phone calls, going here, going there. Baruch Hashem, the rabbi got back to me and he said he had no idea why. No one ever locks that door. So it's like something that never usually happens, just so happens, in this class. So, but we got to thank, the rabbi, we got to thank BJX because we got locked out of one location, but they gave us a different location. So a very big yasher koach, a very, very big thank you to the BJX for letting us have not one but two locations simultaneously. Then we have an additional thank you that we need to get because now everybody had to get from point A to point B. So we want to thank I'm not going to put it on camera, but we want to thank the assist of the driving to bring the people over here. Greatly, appreciate that. And last but not least, we thank everybody for sticking around because otherwise, if not for you, this would not be a class. And in fact, in my mind, I was almost like, okay, fine, there's not going to be a class happening tonight. Like, who is going to stick around, go around over here? But Baruch Hashem, look at the devoted people that we have over here trying to thirst for the Torah, for the God's Torah. It's very interesting because when the way that it works in reward, when you learn something, anything that you do in life, the Gemara, the Chazal tell us, Pirkei Avot tell us, Lefum tzara agra. The harder, the more difficult something is, the greater the reward. So this is really twofold. So number one is you're getting greater reward for just being over here, just because you had to drive and schlep and stay a little bit later. The whole craziness, all that goes to your credit. But doubly so is, if not for you guys being here, there would not be anything. This would not have been gone online. Yeah, probably would have went 1 week, in the future. But regardless, every single view that is going to be seen in the entire virtual world for the entire history that this class is going to be online, you're going to get part of that reward, which is something so unbelievable. I was telling somebody who was very involved in Torah Anytime when recording them, and I told him, I'm like, you're very smart. So it's because the people that say that are speak, okay, so they spend a lot of time, they prepare, and granted, the reward is unbearable, the people that are teaching Torah in public. But then there are people that go and they just assist, they just record the classes and they post it online. So they're doing things very smart. They're getting reward for everything that's being watched, because if not for them, it would have been happened online. So there's a great thank you that not only I have to give, but also the entire virtual world has to give you the entire virtual world that will end up watching this will have to give you, a very big thank you for that. That being said, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. I have to share with you one story before we begin on this matter. Because if I remember correctly, last class I gave some sort of similar speech also, because we also had some sort of issues. It's happening every time. Look at how much I'm trying to get you guys to have reward over here. Look how hard I'm trying to make sure that you're going to get the maximum benefit of these classes. So you're welcome for your hardships. You had a question? Okay, so now there was a story that was, there was a guy who was very wealthy. We didn't get to the topic at hand yet. This is, technically, it was your free will to stay over here, or did you not have free will? Maybe you were supposed to come here anyways. Okay, stay tuned. So, there was a guy who was very wealthy, and he had a very big rabbi that was staying by his house. And we had visitors that were coming, and he had a very, very fancy mansion, marble floors and Persian carpets, the most expensive stuff. Now, when he had the visitors, it was raining, it was muddy, and people were coming in. They were trekking mud throughout the entire house, and he was going crazy. And he's like, I can't believe I did this. And he was very upset about the whole situation. That night, he goes to sleep, and in his dream, he dies. And he gets into the next world, and he is having his final judgment. He sees scary angels. He sees the scariest stuff. He sees his entire life flash right before his eyes. And as he's standing in front of judgment, it doesn't look good for him. It looks like the side of bad outweighs by far the side of good. So he is going crazy, and suddenly when they're about to seal the judgment, they're about to close the verdict, all of a sudden, there's wagon loads of stuff that are coming in. And everyone's like, what's this? What's going on over here? And they start taking bags of mud and they start dumping it on the scale. And they start dumping more mud and more mud on the scale. And everyone's like, what's going on over here? And one of the angels who was bringing the mud, it said, this guy, and he allowed in his house, he allowed the rabbi to come in, and people came with their dirty feet, and they made everything smelly, and they made everything dirty, and it destroyed the house, and destroyed the rugs, and destroyed everything. He says all this goes to his benefit, because it's going all, people are coming to give, to ask the rabbi for advice, to give blessings, whatever it was, they're coming to honor the Torah. So the mud was coming up until suddenly, the good outweighed the bad. Then he wakes up. The next night he had more visitors that come in, and it was again raining. And people were studying. They saw how upset he was. They started rubbing his feet, and he was like, no. Don't rub your feet. Just come in. Bring all the mud. Bring everything in. Everything is relative when we look at it. When we look at it from today's perspective, so the class got delayed an hour. It was a big slap. You guys were standing outside, for quite some time until we figured out what was going to happen. So all this is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what a waste. I ate it. But you don't understand what that's going to... It's very likely, it's possible, that all that waiting is going to be worth more than the actual learning. I guess it depends on your learning level. But at least that one you get. How do I know that? Because the Torah tells us that men get reward for walking to the synagogue. They get reward and if you walk to a further synagogue, you get more reward. Now the question is why? Just say, because not everybody, when you get to the synagogue, they actually pray. But to walking, that they know they do. So everybody gets reward also on the level of how much you're able to, stick around with the concept, stay with the concept, listen, not space out, on the phone. There's so many different distractions that we have. So, at least you get that reward. The extra reward, the reward for coming there that you already got. But now you have the extra, all that hour extra wait. Who knows how much that is going to be. Okay, now we can begin the topic at hand. So now, it's a very important topic. This is such a crucial topic. And you know what I was thinking? That I always try to when there's a hard time to start a class, to make a class, I always try to think, is there something related to the topic? If it's, let's say, a topic with just stories and things like that, then okay, maybe yeah, maybe not. But it's usually, when I think about it, it's usually topics that are extremely crucial to understanding Judaism. Not only that, it's extremely crucial to understanding your life and to make changes in your life. Free will, the topic that we have today, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll probably have to do part 1 and part 2. The topic that we have today, I think, is extremely, extremely crucial. Not only is it crucial, a lot of people have many, many questions on this. And B'ezrat Hashem, the plan is to answer all these questions. Technically we have a week till the next class, so if I don't answer anything now, don't be quiet, don't be silent. Send me your questions, let me know your questions, you can email me the questions, and B'ezrat Hashem will try to answer this in the next class. What I want to try to capture in this class, B'ezrat Hashem, is a few things. Number 1, do we have free will? Number 2, does everybody have free will? Do some people not have free will? We know Paro, for example, his heart was hardened. So we see that according to the Torah, there are some ideas that there are no free will for everybody. So who is lacking free will? Who has free will? Number 3, why do we have free will? Number 4, a very important question that comes up very often. If God knows the future, because God knows everything, then God knows what I'll do. So if God knows what I'll do, then I already did it, then I can't change it. So how do I have free will if God knows the future, if God knows what I'll already do? So I'm sort of locked into doing whatever God knows that I'm going to do. The next thing that we're going to speak about is, what is the whole point of tests? Why does God test us? If God knows the outcomes, because God does know everything, knows the future, then what's the whole point of the test? And finally, 2 more finallys. Finally, part 1 is a very important thing. Can my free will affect you? Because we're going to expand on this question. This question is so deep, it's so fundamental. If I have free will, can I change something that was not ordained for you? Let's say something was not pre-programmed for you. Can I do something to do that? And we'll explain this more in depth. And finally, for real, is if everything is ordained from heaven, then why should I get punished for doing something bad if it was supposed to happen anyways? If this was supposed to happen. So this is a very brief overview of what we want to deal with. If you don't understand any of those questions, either very good or very bad. Very good because you don't have questions, or very bad because on me that I just didn't explain it. But bear with me, we'll explain each one of those things in depth and also try to answer them very, very clearly. First of all, the question we have to deal is, how do we know we have free will? according to the scientific views, there's something known as determinism. Determinism means that everything that takes place in the universe is predetermined by a set of rules. Just like you look at chemistry, you look at science, you look at math, everything has the calculations, everything has the formula, everything has a set of rules. So too human beings. Everything is pre-programmed, everything is predetermined, and there is no, easiest, I guess, verbiage that I could use, no free will. Everything is just predetermined. And in fact, some philosophers go on and say that what happens is that you have conflicting ideas in your brain, and you're not sure which one to do. What usually happens, I'll give you a good example. So, I don't know if anybody here stuck around, but let's say somebody came to the class, and then they realized the door was locked. And then they had a choice, either stay for the class or leave. So they have these conflicting ideas. Should I stay, should I leave? Whatever is stronger, according to science, that's what's going to win. Meaning that you don't have free will, and it's only an illusion, according to science, that you have free will. And remember, this is according to science, not according to the Torah. According to science, it's an illusion that you have free will. Why is it an illusion? Because all you know is that you have two options. But at the end, the strongest is going to win, regardless of whatever you feel. So according to science, according to many scientists and philosophers, there is no free will. This is why marketing is such a big thing. Because when you're going to buy something, according to, I guess, the marketing psychologists, it's not because it's what you want. It's because, it's not because you made this decision. It's because you are pre-programmed to do it. You saw certain things, and to some extent this is true. You look at what people have and what people want, it's not because they need it or they want it, it's because they're told that they need to have it. So there's many things that is already pre-programmed. So according to the science perspective, free will does not exist. However, and by the way, this is something very interesting, the reason why the secular world does not like the idea of free will, because if I don't have free will, then I'm not held responsible for my action. I am not held responsible for my action. Because it wasn't up to me. If it would be up to me, if I had free will, I wouldn't have done it. So rather, according to science, the secular world, the whole thing with evolution, why is that such a big thing, even though it makes no sense? Because it takes away accountability. And if I don't have to be held responsible for my actions, I don't have to feel bad about doing something bad. We spoke about last week, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, cognitive dissonance. The idea that we can't have two conflicting ideas in our brain. We don't like it. We like to resolve it. So if I do something bad and I know that it's bad, it doesn't sit well with me. We have to use excuses to go and make ourselves feel bad. Now this is a great excuse. This is an excuse that covers everything. There's nothing. This is like a blank. This is like the answer C when you don't know on a test, right? You just answer. This is the blanket answer. We're not held responsible. Who cares? So you did something bad? Okay, to the extent people could do the worst sin possible that you could think of, they could do it and be like, it was predetermined. God wanted me to do this. They're believers. They're believers of believers. They believe, but God wanted me to do this sin. There are people that committed the worst sin, adultery, and they claim still that, God wanted this to happen. Like, no, where did you get that information from? But all of a sudden, if God wanted it to happen, so it was all for the best, it's not for me, there is a way that you don't have to do tshuva anymore. There's no need for doing tshuva. But there's a problem that we have to do with that. And even before we get to the Torah, when someone does something good, do they feel good about themselves? Yes. When someone does something bad, do they feel bad about themselves? Yes. The question is why? According to those people, if everything is already predetermined, then why do you feel good about doing something? Why do you have your name, plastered on buildings when you give donations? Why? It's predetermined. This was already meant to happen. If you did something bad, why do you feel bad? Granted, there are some people that don't feel bad when they do something bad. Generally, we call those people psychopaths. But for the most part, why would you feel good? Why would you feel bad? Rather, because deep down we really know that we are held accountable for our actions. And furthermore, if we really, according to the scientific view, if we really don't have free will, then what makes us different than animals? You see a cheetah, right? For some reason, you're in a place that there's a cheetah, right? You're going to Africa, the safari, which is Africa, and you're going in there and you're witnessing, a cheetah like zip through and take a baby deer. What is a baby deer called? I don't know. A doe? No. Take a baby deer. They go and they run, and they find Bambi. Bambi has the biggest eyes. Bambi was literally singing to her children, tucking them in, and out of nowhere, cheetah. This huge cheetah comes in and just in front of the children, traumatizing the children, just rips off Bambi's head. And there's blood everywhere, and the cheetah devours this bat. Should we go in a little bit more detail? There are limbs that are veins. Everything is, and people are watching this. Are they going to say, like, look at this murderous cheetah, this unbelievable, can you believe this cheetah? In front of the children, nonetheless, you should lock him up. Lock up this cheetah for life. No one's going to think about that. What are people going to do? People are going to be like, oh, that's so sad. And they're just going to walk away. Now imagine that same scenario, not a cheetah. There's a man. I'm going to not paint this picture as much as I did over there. And there's a woman putting her babies to bed. And a man comes in and does exactly what the cheetah did, for the man. And if you think this doesn't happen, it does happen. It happens in Israel. It happens, for what the terrorists do literally in the homes of Jewish people. And they do that, and they destroy this person's life in front of the children. If you don't believe that the human beings have free will, then why do you punish murderers? Why do you why are they held accountable if all it is just chemicals that's going in? Now granted, okay, I'm taking extremes of cases, but we have to understand that there's got to be a direction that we have to go over here. You look at an animal. An animal, it can make choices. It can say, I want to eat this, I don't want to eat this. I want to go to sleep, it can make certain choices, but these are not moral choices. You've never heard of, you never heard of an animal because you don't speak to animals, but you've never seen an animal be like, I'm not eating today, I'm fasting. I had a huge lunch the other day, looks in the mirror, I'd be like, it's not going to look good for me, I'm not going to be able to get into my leash, I barely walk now, you know what, I'm fasting today, I'm doing a cleanse. Right, green vegetables only, please. You don't see that by animals because animals don't have that moral capability to make those choices. Humans do. So we see there is a difference between humans and animals. But yet, according to the scientific view, in essence, there is really no difference if you're saying either one doesn't have any free will. Then people go and they say, okay, but animals experience emotions. Dog can be happy. It sees its owner and it's very happy. That's true that it's happy, but it's not happy because of its moral, things that it has done. It's happy because of the situation. It's happy because of X, Y, and Z. That's not free will. That's just X plus Y equals Z. That's literally That's literally the scenario of just nature just happening. So we see over here that there is a very, very big difference between humans and animals. This also makes sense when you think about it. You know how this world is turning into a world that people would save the puppies over save the babies, thank you. I was lost in chain of mind because I was trying to think of something. And there was something that said like this. Does anybody know where there are animal shelters?
Yes.
Yeah, they're all over the place, right? There are signs for them. Anybody know where there are orphanages? It says, why do we know? Why does everybody know where the animal shelters are, but no one knows where the orphanages are? You know why animals get adopted? Well, okay, granted, it's a little bit easier than having a child, especially not your child. But when you think about it, it's much easier to have, animals adopted now than humans are adopted. And granted, it should be that way. But it should not be easier that they should be more knowledgeable, like everybody should have over there. The world is so infatuated with the animals to the extent that it's almost as close as humans. And people would go, if someone has money to donate, there are people that are going to donate to animal shelters, to all these things, over starving homeless people that don't have food to feed their children. Now, in what mindset can that be right? In what life cycle can that be right? Now, granted, okay, you want to give $1 here, $1 there, but there are people that give tremendous amount of money to these things. There are people that treat their dogs. They build castles for the dogs. If I'm not mistaken, there was one celebrity. I think I know who it was, but I don't want to say because I don't want to, chas v'shalom, say a wrong thing about a wrong celebrity. After all, this is not, what is that, People magazine. So, or whatever the gossip ones, I don't know what they're called. So, but there was a celebrity that built a $300,000 doghouse for her dog. Now, okay, you do whatever you want with your money, but it brings you to a certain understanding of what's important in someone's life. Like, really, is humans and animals really on the same level, or sometimes even more? Obviously not. One of the reasons is because humans have so much more of a moral capability than do animals. Now, when we think about
The orphanage thing, but the thing with humans and animals, they have for animals as well. There's a foster system. That's why in America there's not a house where it's an orphanage. I know a woman who's constantly fostering, and then adopts her children.
Right.
I think, isn't there a difference? People are taking on.
Well, maybe I could explain it this way.
A house where Annie is.
Right. Have you ever seen a commercial for we need people to adopt this child?
not adopt. There's like the foreign children who like need,
Yeah, for $1.75 you could feed little Zimbabwe for 7 years. But I'm saying, but the idea is like, even if when you do that,
they're not necessarily advertising like someone adopts a child, someone adopt the animal. Like they're saying,
right,
contribute to maintaining their well-being.
But I think the point, right? So the point, right? So what you're saying is correct. So, but the point I think is pretty much, is pretty much still stands steady that there's a lot of emphasis on animal life over human life in a certain extent. Not per se, but in a certain area. If you could put it that way, there are people that go and they treat animals better than humans. Now, I don't know how I got into this. Was not intention of mine to get into this. PETA convention, but it is whatever. We got there. Now we're leaving. So all right. So yeah, but the idea is also that if we deny free will, then how are we better than robots? We're really not. If we don't have free will, then you're just like a robot programmed to do something, and that's it. And if we don't have free will, and we're just like robots, then what is the purpose of all this? And some people would say there's no purpose. Right, you're right. That's it. We're just like robots, and there's no purpose. And that is a very, very sad way to live life. I don't know how a person can be happy at all in their life if they just think they're pre-programmed. And they're just like moving around and just like a robot, like just doing things that they think that they need to. Besides the fact that Judaism itself, it's based on free will. Any religion has to be based on free will. Any normal religion has to be based on free will. Any real religion, okay, whatever, I think you have the point. It has to be based on free will. Why? Because there's no such thing as reward. You can't reward or punish somebody if they don't have free will. The whole Torah is void if there's no free will. There's nothing nothing makes sense. It's so essential, this question, that if you don't have an understanding of this question, then there is no point of anything. There really is no point of anything. So, there is, before we actually, tackle on the idea of free will, there are some people that do not have free will. The Rambam, in the laws of the Chagiga offering, in the 2nd chapter, the 4th halakha, says that a deaf mute, a mentally incompetent person, and a minor, they do not have free will. To the extent that they do not have free will, says the Gemara in Bava B'Kama, page 87a, that people that do not have free will are not obligated to pay restitution in case they damage. Which means this: if you have a deaf mute, a mentally disabled person, or a child that goes and damages something, they are exempt from payments. Okay, granted, their owner, whatever, their father, we're not going to get into that, but they themselves are exempt from payments. However, if somebody damages them, you are required to pay them. And so much so, says the Pri Megadim, in the introduction to the Shulchan Aruch, said that these types of individuals do not receive any punishment for their transgression. They don't have free will, they cannot, and they are not held liable for their transgression. Meaning that anybody else of sound mind is held liable for their transgression. Okay, so there's also a question that is asked, then why did God create these people? What are the purpose of people that don't, minors, we know there's a thing, but there's, deaf mute, they're mentally disabled. What is the purpose for them? So the Chazon Ish used to go, and when he saw a mentally disabled person, he would stand up for them. Why? Because he said that these people have very, very holy souls, that they're coming in this world to just fix one little tiny thing. And because of that, they didn't want it, or God didn't give it to them, giving them the option to have the ability to mess anything up. So they cannot, if they're coming down as mentally disabled, they can't mess anything up. They could only gain from it. So because of that, they're very holy and they can't mess anything up, and that's why you have even people that do not have free will, do not get punished for the transgression. They're still in this world. Okay, now let's try to tackle the next question. The next question we have is, why do we have free will? The Ramchal goes and says something which is noted in Alpi Kabbalah, that the whole purpose of us being over here is not for this world. Its purpose is for the next world, and we get reward for the next world. If God would have created a system that we would have just been in the next world, then we would sort of gotten, it's called the bread of shame. You're just getting handouts. And you can't enjoy it properly. If the greatest thing to do, the purpose of creation is to get the greatest pleasure, the way to get the greatest pleasure is to earn it. You enjoy what you earn more than what you get as a free gift. So, says the Ramchal, God put us down in this world, had to give us free will. Now that we have free will, now we have the ability to choose between right and good. And when we choose good, then we'll be able to reap the benefits, the rewards, all that more so. You can't even compare from the reward that we have when we have free will for the reward that we have if we don't have free will. So that is reason number one. Reason number two, Rabbi Kiva Tatz explains that one of the greatest things, the greatest connection, the greatest pleasure they can have in this world is to have a connection with God, the connection with the Almighty. Now, in order to have, if you break down the two roots to all human functions, you could break it down into two things: love and fear. Now, fear you can force fear on somebody else. And in fact, fear is usually forced on the other person. But love, you cannot force someone to love you. You cannot force someone to love anything. The only way for someone to love something is it has to be based off their free will. And if we have to have a relationship with God, it has to be based, the highest relationships, obviously a relationship based of love. There has to be an essence of free will of us wanting to do that. Think about a relationship between you and your spouse. So, if you're forced in that, you can't properly love that. In order to have the highest connection that you possibly can, it has to be based on your choice. I want to be here. If you don't want to be here, then you're already, the relationship is already fallen. And this is also true in Judaism. There are some people that they're just Jews because they're just Jews. And if you ask them, if you had a choice that you would be able to start over, and you could either check, instead of being Jew, you could check non-Jew or Gentile. You have Caucasian, you have Asian, Jew, Gentile. You have a box that you could check off. Would you check off the Jew or you would check off the non-Jew? And if people would go and they say non-Jew, that means that they're not here based out of love. They might be here based out of fear. They might be indifferent, but they're definitely not here out of love, which means is they're not practicing Judaism correctly. They're not practicing Judaism the right way, the most optimal way. So in order to have a relationship, in order to build a relationship with God, you have to have free will. Furthermore, in order to build a relationship, relationships are built off shared values. You ask anybody that comes back from a date, what do they usually say? Like, we have so much in common. Who cares? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, well, okay, fine. What do but that's, you need it, because when you have shared values, you can connect. Now, and that's why the Gemara in Sota, page 14a says that, how does one attach him to God? By imitating his attributes. By imitating God, by sharing the same values, that's how we're able to attach ourselves to God. Now, we know that God, first of all, God is a giver. God, we know, is a giver. In order for you to be a giver, you have to want to do it based off your free will. Once you have the ability to do that, then you can also attach yourself to God. Also, we know that God has free will. God has the ability to choose what God wants to do. Now, in order to have the similar, the shared values, we also, to some extent, have to have some sort of level of independence. This also brings us into the idea of honor. We know that Hakol bara lechvodo. Everything that God created for His honor. How do you honor somebody? Can you force somebody to honor you? You can. Dictators try to do it, but it's fake. It's not real honor. Honor stems from love and fear or awe. In order to have the fear and the awe, you could kind of force that. But you can't honor somebody, you can't love somebody. Honor has to have an essence of love. And if you don't have that free will, there's no way to honor somebody. So the whole Judaism, the whole essence, everything was created for His glory, it falls apart. It's a necessity, it's a must that you have this free will. Okay. So far so good? Okay, that was an introduction. Okay, so now we have to have, this is one of the most famous questions that I get when I'm dealing with free will. The question is like this, and we've mentioned this before, but let's try to explain it. If God knows the future, how do I have free will? So let's explain that question. So let's say Mr. A was going to go and rob Mr. B of $1 million. Now, Mr. A goes and say, listen, did God know that I would rob Mr. B? Yeah. Did God want it to happen? Must be, because otherwise how could a guy do something that God doesn't want? So not only that, God knew that I was going to do it. It was in the future already. So I had to do it because I already did it. So it must be that I had to do it. Do you understand that verbiage I use? So if God, now this is where the question can really be split into two, but let's focus on one. How can I have free will if God knows what I'm going to do? That is the essence of the question. If God knows what's going to happen in the future, how do I have the free will? This is a question that I get asked again and again and again. So let's give a few answers. First of all, Rav Sadia Gaon goes and says, the fact that God knows what the choices will be, and He has the knowledge of that is not the cause of those choices. He knows in advance what's going to happen. That's irrelevant of what's going to be. Put that on the side, we'll explain it in more detail. Before we go, we're going to give you probably three answers. The third answer you're going to probably love the best. But before we get into that, let's go into answer number two, the answer of the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchot Shuvah, the fifth parak, the fifth halakha. He goes like this and says that God knows if a righteous person is going to be righteous, right? Right. He's going to know a wicked person is going to be wicked, right? Right. No one's shaking their head. Okay. So it says the Rambam, if somebody's going to be righteous, then he cannot be not righteous. If somebody's supposed to be wicked, then he cannot not be wicked. So where is the free will? The Rambam goes and says something like this. And whenever I learned this, I never understood it until I learned it in depth, and then I understood it. The Rambam says like this, and I'm going to read it in one sentence in Hebrew. No, she'tshuvat she'ela zu, that the answer for this question, aruka me'eretz mida v'rechova minei yam, its measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea, which means that if you keep on writing on this thing, you will not be able to comprehend the depth of this question. When I was learning in this in depth, when I realized how true what this Rambam statement is, and I believe really this, the smarter that you are, the more difficult this question is going to be to you. The more intelligence, the more that you can grasp this question, that you don't realize how this is a serious question. Because if God has the future, if God knows the future, then the future is supposed to happen already. If the future is supposed to happen already, then how do I have free will to change anything? It was supposed to happen this way. So the Rambam goes and answers and says that, human knowledge is not comparable even to the slightest with God knowledge. And there's you have in Exodus chapter 33 verse 20. It says, "K'lo yarani adam v'chai." No man can perceive God and live. You cannot understand God. And we know in Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8, it says, "K'lo machshavotai machshavotechem v'lo darkechem darkai." Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. We cannot comprehend God. Why cannot we comprehend God? First of all, we know that God exists above time. That in itself we can't comprehend. We can't comprehend something. We live in space and matter, time, space, and matter. We cannot understand, we cannot comprehend something that exists out of that. Your greatest imagination, you cannot begin to fathom. What does it mean not to have time? What does it mean to have infinite? What is it? It's something, and not only that, we know that the name for God, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is, Haya Hoveh V'Yeh. He was, he is, and will be. That's why the letters are made that way. God sees there's no past, present, and future because God is with not bound to time. So God sees the past. Your future is God's present. Your past is God's present. God sees everything in one snapshot. So can we comprehend that? If we cannot comprehend that, then how can you begin comprehending the fact that God can know the future and you still have free will to do it? We can't even begin to comprehend the depth of understanding God. Rabbi Finger explained in one of his books, and he says like this, and he says, you're on a train station. And so let's say you're in Avenue J stop. So you're in Avenue J stop. But let's say you go to King's Highway stop. You're not in Avenue J, you're not in Avenue M, you're not in Newkirk, you're not in anything else. You're only where you are right now. And you could only see where you are right now. Now imagine there was a helicopter hovering above the Q train. And the helicopter could see, J, it could see M, it could see King's Highway, it could see Avenue H, it could see everything. It could present everything. So where we are on our life, we're on the train. That's what we see it. We see only where we are. But God is like on that helicopter. He sees everything. He sees all the stops. Everything that goes onto it. Now, because God's going to see the future, it does not mean you still have the free will. That, and if you could explain the Rambam a little bit more. Let's say, the Rambam, it's so brilliant that he not only does he not answer the question, he negates the question. It's not a question. Why? Because you don't understand. Like, how could you ask a question about something you don't understand? It's a brilliance of the Rambam, Maimonides. But okay, let's go on to the Ravad, the Rava's answer. This is, I think, one of the easiest ones to comprehend. Let's say you have an astronomer, an astrologer, a guy who looks at the stars, predicts the future. One's, one's a scientist, the other one's wearing a robe and has a big hat and, probably a wand. There's a science behind it. So they go and they predict the future. They predict the future to such accuracy and it happens. Did his knowledge of predicting the future change the person's free will to do whatever he predicted? The answer is no. He just read the signs very well. And I'll give you an example like this. Let's say you study somebody, like to an extent that no one has ever studied that person in history. The person needs to go and buy a car, buy an expensive item. And you study how much money they have, how much their history of their spending, what is their likes, what's their dislikes, what type of car they've been searching for, everything that goes on in them, what colors like, leather, the options. You study this person inside and out. And then you go and you make a prediction. This person is going to buy this car, and it's going to be in this color, and it's going to be this make, this model. And this person goes and buys it. Did you, alter this person's free will? Did you make that person buy the car? The answer is no. You knew based on your information. So God knows you better than you know you. So God knows you what's going to happen before you even know what's going to happen because God knows you so well. But the easiest way, and this is when people ask me this question, this is the way that I always answer it, and I feel this is one of the strongest answers. Somebody goes and robs the mini mart. And what I do is a day prior to this, I have a time machine. because, I know people. And I go in this time machine, and I go to the future, to the next day. And I witness this entire mini-mart been robbed. And then I go back to the present, and then I am sitting right outside the mini-mart. And I go to somebody next door, and I'll be like, I bet you $100. Well, can't do that. Okay, trust me, this mini-mart is going to get robbed in 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, on the dot, I show them the timer, on the dot, it gets robbed. Did I alter the free will of anybody involved in that? That's it, but I knew the future. I knew the future. That means over here that I can know the future, and yet I do not change any of your free will. You still have 100% free will of what you did, even though that I knew the future. So we can begin understanding that there is a possibility of knowing the future without actually altering the free will. The Rabbi Chanan Wasserman goes and explains like this, and he says that a person sitting at gunpoint is liable if he would sin anyways, which means that somebody sticks a gun in someone else's head and says, I want you to bow down to this idol. And he does, and he bows down to the idol. Now, if that person wanted to do that, would have sinned anyways, he is liable for that. If he wouldn't have, he would not have been liable for that. And let's explain that. That's a little bit of a hard concept to do. Rabbi Kiva Tax explained this very, very beautifully. He says, let's say you have a chip implanted in your brain. And this chip, let's say I can control it, and I can control your choices. And I want you to make a specific choice. And let's say the choice is like this. You could either go right and left. Let's make it very simple. You either want to go right or left. And I want you to go right. And you have a dilemma. Where should you go, right or left? Now, I'm going to wait to see what your choice is going to be. And I can manipulate it. I can push a button, and you're going to go right where I want to. Or, I don't push it, and then you have the free will. Now, let's say I don't push the button, but you, on your own free will, you went right. The fact that I had the ability to change your free will, did that change your decision? Did I change your free will? I didn't push the button, but I had the ability to. Do you still have the free will to do that? Are you held liable for the thing that you did? Anybody here? Hi. Welcome everybody to our class night. Welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Okay, over here.
That doesn't mean that I have
right.
to do that.
Well, that's a little bit of a deeper thing. The idea is like this. The idea is that even if I can manipulate your future, but I didn't, but the fact that I could have, but I didn't, does that change your accountability? You did. No, it doesn't, because you did it on your own free will, even though I had the ability to do that. So, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. This is something very bad. This class is a little bit of a philosophical class, I guess, if you may, like thinking about life, right? It's one of the things that you do like this. So, but this is something let's bring this into a practical, understanding. Something beautiful over here. The Rambam says something like this, that if somebody goes and if somebody points a gun to somebody else's head and says, I want you to bow down to this idol, and the guy says, halachically, you're not allowed to bow down to the idol. So there's 3 sins that you're supposed to die rather than to violate that sin. What are they? Number 1 is murder, which means if someone points a gun to someone else's head and says, I want you to murder this person or I'm going to murder you, you're not allowed to murder that person. Number 2 is immorality, and number 3 is idolatry. Now let's say a guy points a gun and says, I want you to go and bow down to this idol and serve this idol. And you know what you need to do, but you're like, I can't die, I can't. And you end up just doing it. Are you held liable? Verse of the Rambam, you're not. You're not held liable because you did it under duress. It's not, you didn't sin voluntarily. However, and this, by the way, the Rambam, you can look in the fundamentals of the Torah for the 5th chapter, the 4th halacha, and the 6th halacha also. But let's say a little bit of a different scenario. Somebody has a very lethal illness, and the only way they could get cured by this illness is only by doing one of these 3 cardinal sins. And they go and they do this cardinal sin. Are they going to be held liable? The answer is yes. Now the question is why? Both scenarios, they sort of were forced to do something. They were forced to do it. So why, if you are putting a gun to someone else's head, they're not held liable? But if the person did it at their own reason because they wanted to save themselves, they both reason they're trying to get out of death. That's the bottom line. They're both trying to get out of death. One is liable, one is not. So the difference is because where was your choice? When somebody put a gun to somebody else's head and says, I want you to bow down to this idol, and that person did it, he didn't want to bow down, or she didn't want to do the sin. But when someone goes and someone has a sin in front of them that they need to do to save their life, it's their choice to do it. They were forced, they weren't forced, they were sort of put into a corner that needed to be doing it, but they weren't forced to do that. That was their own free will that chose to make that sin. And this is how we understand. Does that make sense? See some blank faces. Let me explain. This is how we can understand the Purim. We know in Purim, the Gemara in Shabbat, page 88a, says, Kimu ma shekiblu kvar. The Jewish people accepted the Torah they never accepted it before. What it means is that when God gave us the Torah originally on Har Sinai, He literally put a mountain over our head and be like, hey, do you want this? If not, you're gonna be buried over here. I'd be like, okay, we'll take it. Thank you very much. So we took it under duress. Can we held liable? We took it under duress. So came Purim. Purim, we went and we accepted the whole Torah out of that we wanted it. And that's what the Gemara says, Kimu ma shekiblu kvar. But the question is, Purim, they're also under duress. Haman was going to kill them. They were also under duress. So what's the difference between what happened on Har Sinai and what happened by Purim? Do you understand the question? The answer is beautifully. Because by putting a mountain over their head, God was basically forcing them. You must do it and you have no other option. By Purim, did Haman say, hey, I'm only going to kill you only if you're going to keep the Torah? No. The Jewish people, they were put in a corner, but they chose. It was their own free will to do it, to decide that. Granted, it was still like death, in the air. If you can, the scent of death was still there. But the real choice, the free will, was really in them. So that is what that is the idea of Kimu ma shekiblu kvar. So now, question.
What about before Purim happened?
You're asking what are the liable levels?
Before Purim happened, in history.
Where were they held liable for their accountability for what they, for the sins that they did? Very good question. Has a lot of digging they need to. They obviously did held liable. They were still liable for what they did, but it obviously was a different level. It was a different level. But again, a very good, excellent question. So now, does that answer me? So we asked the question, how can we have free will if God knows the future? Are you guys all comfortable with that answer? I think you should be very comfortable with that answer. So much so that if someone goes and be like, well, yeah, you believe in free will? Well, if God has a future, you'll just, you just take that out there and be like, guess what? I have 3 bullets in here. Let's play Russian, whatever it's called. Which one? Russian or left? Which one you want? Because now you got, okay, so now you have that answer. Now we have to deal with another question. And that question is, we're doing good on time. Okay, well, technically not, but from when we started, we're good on time. Okay, so the question is that why does God test us? God knows the future. So if God knows the future, what's the whole point of putting us through the test? And the answer is in the Rambam, and Maimonides, Rambam, if you want to look at it in the Guide for the Perplexed, and Nachmanides goes in many places. If you look in Bereshit chapter 22, verse 1, the reason why God tests us is not because God doesn't know what's going to happen. God knows if you're going to succeed or fail. But God tests us not for us, but not for Him, but for us. We get to realize our potential when we get tested. We get to realize what we can accomplish when we're tested. So when we get tested, it's for us and not rather for God. Okay, that was just a small question I wanted to sneak in there. But let's go on to this is. He knows if you're going to pass or not. Mm-hmm.
So is it like this? Like I heard another rabbi worded it like he wouldn't have put you in that situation if he didn't think you would make it through.
Any test, excellent. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Any test that you get placed in, you have the ability to pass. Anything because otherwise you wouldn't be put in that situation.
But he knows if you're going. But
yep.
I feel like you gotta pass or fail.
Right.
I feel like certain tests, you're like, I'd rather just not know my potential.
Yeah, and that's why we ask for not to be tested. We ask for not to be tested. We don't want to be tested. But if we, we rather not. We rather just do what we need to do the easiest way. People when they, people realize their strength in the Holocaust, but no one wants the Holocaust to realize their strength. So. The idea is you don't want to be tested, but it's not our choice. That's not our free will. We'll soon get to see what we have the ability for our free will. Okay, so now, wow, thank you very much. Unbelievable. Okay, whatever's in the fridge will be fine. Thank you. So let's go on to another very, very important. But this is a fundamental question. This is also an amazing question. Oh, this question is sick. Question is like this: can my free will affect you? Now we have to understand the depths of this question also. I understand that I have free will, so I could reap the consequences of my action. So if I do something good, that will be my consequence. If I do something bad, I have to suffer for that consequences. But why should my free will make you suffer? Which means let's say, can somebody kill somebody that wasn't meant to die? Can somebody steal something that wasn't meant to be stolen? Now this question is a lot more difficult than you think about it. Why? Because let's look at it from 2 angles. Number one, in order for me to have pure free will, I have the ability to do whatever I want. I have to have the ability to rob, steal, do good, do bad. It doesn't matter. Whatever I want, I have the ability to do it. Now, if I cannot do something to you, that lessens my free will. That means I have free will in some areas, but some areas I don't have free will. So that means do I really have free will? Let's take this, let's take this a step further. If everything was supposed to happen now I have to be careful because you can't have the question too much stronger that you won't, that you won't realize the answer. But you have to understand the depth of this question. If let's say everything was supposed to happen, is going to happen, then I am not changing anything. Which means anything that was supposed to happen to you, you are going to happen that anyway. Which means can we make any real effect in the world? Can we make any real change in the world? If everything that's supposed to happen is going to happen, then I can't make any real effect, any change in the world, because it was supposed to happen already. But then how do I have free will if I can't do it?
Maybe you're the one who's supposed to make that change. It's supposed to happen.
Okay, but then I don't have the free will, then I was supposed to do it. So whichever way you look at it, thank you. Whichever way you look at it, it becomes very problematic. Thank you. In one aspect, thank you very much. In one aspect, you could look at it and you could say, either my free will is limited, or not everything is automatically ordained. There's something that has to give over here. Now you realize these are two fundamentals in Judaism. We can have one of these pillars fall down. It's a very, very serious question. Do you understand the seriousness of this question? Is it clear? Do I have to make any more examples? No, we're okay. Okay. So in order to understand this, we have to go back to a class we did a while back on evil eye. The question is like this. The question is, can evil eye harm you? And we know that, well, to a certain extent for certain people, yes, it can harm you. Now the question is, how? If you get judged on Rosh Hashanah, for the entire year, everything that's going to happen is judged on Rosh Hashanah. So what is the evil eye going to help? They could do an evil eye from today to tomorrow. If it was ordained and already decreed on Rosh Hashanah that it's supposed to happen, then it will happen. If it wasn't, it's not going to happen. Evil eye, shmevil eye, it doesn't matter. Ordained is going to happen, or not ordained is not going to happen. So what is evil eye? In fact, what is anything? Why do we even try anything? Everything is supposed to happen. It's going to happen already. So the Chazon Ish goes and explains like this. He says that if somebody is, let's say, decreed that he's not going to die this year, you could give the strongest evil eye in your arsenal. Nothing's going to happen to that person. If that person's supposed to live, that person's going to live. You cannot change that. But there is something. There's an aspect that, let's say, someone was meant to die, and it wasn't written how he was supposed to die. He could die this way, he could die that way. It's just written that he was supposed to die. So that evil eye could go and kill that person. But so far, that's not so scary. Okay, fine. So if it was supposed to happen, it's supposed to happen. But says the Chazon Ish something very scary. It says something like this. It says that there are some people that when God writes on Rosh Hashanah, it sort of leaves an open book. That if they have the zchut, then the evil eye won't affect it. If they don't, which means somebody could die even if it wasn't decreed that they were going to die. So we have to look at it like this. If it was decreed that a person is going to die, he's going to die. If it was decreed that a person was not going to die, he's not going to die. But sometimes it's like this person will fill in the blank. You get to, fill in the blank. It really depends. It depends on your merit. It depends on what's going to be. That type of person who doesn't have everything already decreed, that type of person, an evil eye can have a very strong effect on that person to the extent that it could kill that person. But we don't know. We don't know if we are what we're destined. So hence this is why we get we have to be wary of the evil eye. So now we have to understand something like this. Listen to this sentence if I could. I'll read over here. All events in the world occur in the world with divine permission, but not all events occur because God decrees them in the first instance. Do you understand what? Let's explain that. Let's explain something. It's a very, very philosophical class. It's a very deep class. So you have to bear with me a little bit. Everything that's going to happen must happen in a way that God allows it to happen. But not everything did God say that it should happen this way. Now, that's going to blow people's mind, especially for the people that are like from a certain sect. I can't really, say that everything is supposed to happen like this. Well, yes and no. And we're going to answer for both of them. So for everybody who got really angry right now inside, bear with me. We'll, appease your anger shortly. But we have to understand this concept. We have some sources for this. In Shmuel Bet, chapter 24, verse 14, it says like this, and we say this in Tachnun. King David said to God, Tzar li ma'od niplo na biyad Hashem ki rabim rachamav. King David said to God, he said, let us fall into the hands of God because he's merciful, but not into the hands of man, let us not fall into it. And there's commentaries. I mean, so David first of all explains that God can show mercy, man will not show mercy. And Pnei Yeshua says that if there was an option of famine or war, and you had to choose one, choose famine, because that's in God's hand. And God has more mercy. The question is, why does it make a difference? If everything is preordained what's supposed to happen, why are we basing off what's the difference, mercy or not mercy? The answer is over here. We see that King David rather befall in the hands of God and not to the hands of man. Meaning that humans are dangerous far more than we can begin to imagine. Humans have the ability to go and to change something that was not necessarily decreed. Which means it's so strong as your ability of the free will is that you could put someone in a situation that they weren't supposed to be in that situation. Now granted, God allowed it to be in that situation, but it wasn't decreed that they should have been that way. That's the level of free will that you have. It's so scary to think that we have some real change in the world. Now let us explain this more. Bear with me with this. This is something you have to stick with me, or this is probably how we're gonna, close the class and to understand this in a very, very clear way. The Or Chaim goes and explains this in the way of the sale of Joseph to his brothers. The brothers were Joseph was a dreamer. He dreamed, he said the brothers are going to bow down to him, people are going to go and bow down. And the brothers were convinced that these are all fabrications. He's a lie. That's not going to happen. So what did they decide to do? What they were going to do is they were going to kill him. Now, if they kill him, then they're able to kill him. That means that no one's going to bow down to him. That's going to prove that his dreams are false. So by killing him, because if they are able to kill him, then it must be that his dreams are not going to be are going to be false. But Reuven went and stepped forward and says, no. He says, let's not kill him. Let's throw him into the pit. And put him in the pit with wild animals, with scorpions and snakes over there. He got thrown into the pit. Now, why did Reuven change it from murdering them to put him in the pit? That's almost also death sentence. You're going in there with, you don't, I know people do this for money, but you should not be going into a place where there are scorpions and snakes, especially when they're hungry. You can't expect you to get out, to get out alive. So Reuven, how Reuven was explaining this, how Reuven understanding this, says Or Chaim? Human beings have free will. Meaning to the extent that the brothers would have had the ability to kill Yosef if it wasn't really destined for him to die. And we'll explain this. But humans have free will. Do animals have free will? No. Which means is if we put him in the pit with animals, then we could really see if his dreams are going to be true or not going to be true. Because by us humans, we could change it. It doesn't mean that his dreams are false. But if we put him in the pit, and now it's all in the hands of the animals don't have free will. The animals don't have free will. So then we could really see if his dreams are coming true and dreams are not. That's why it says over here in Genesis chapter 37 verse 22, Hitzil oto mi'adam. What did it say that God, that Reuven saved Yosef from their brothers, mi'adam, from the hands? What hands? From the hands of free will. He saved them because only human beings have free will. So he saved them from the free will. Now, we see over here that free will has very, very serious consequences in this world. So much so that a human can put somebody in a situation of danger that it wasn't ordained, that it wasn't originally planned for that person to be. However, if that person gets out of that danger, that depends on that person's merit. Now let's explain that. Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky goes and says like this. It says a person cannot be killed without heavenly decree, but against human free will, one needs more merit to be saved. You need more merit to be saved for this. Now, then it's in order to understand this even to a completely different level of clarity that I'm telling you, this is going to blow your mind. The Netziv says like this. Reuven realized that you need personal merit to be saved. So Yosef would be, very likely, maybe he had the merit to be saved from the animals who don't have any free will. And this is in essence what Yaakov Avinu thought. Yaakov Avinu, when he sent Yosef to his brother, he sent him to Shechem. Shechem is a very dangerous place. There's a history going on in Shechem, right? There was not good stuff going on. He sent him to a very dangerous place. So he knew that Yosef, now that's why he picked specifically Yosef, because he felt that Yosef would have the power, the spiritual, defense system, that he has enough merit to prevent that from anything bad from happening with him. That's why in Genesis chapter 37 verse 33, it says when they brought him the coat and they said that he was eaten up by a wild animal, what did Yaakov Avinu says? Tarof taraf Yosef. Yosef was eaten but torn, but it says twice. What does it say twice that he was torn? Because number one, that he was killed, but you know what? He was torn because he thought that he had he was on a spiritual level that he would have the merit not to be destroyed by an animal. Because he should have been on a high, he should have had the merit to avoid that. But now that he didn't have the merit, taraf Yosef. Yosef was now this what troubled Yaakov so much. Not only that his son died, but the son didn't have the merit to be saved from an animal. Because that's something that you have to be saved from free will. So we have to understand this, that when someone gets placed in a situation, the free will allow that person to place them in that situation. And you could be placed in a situation you weren't meant to be. How will you get out? That depends on your merit. If you have the merit, then you can go out. This is how the chinuch goes and explains the idea of revenge, nekama. Why shouldn't we take a revenge? If you have free will, and you have the ability to do some damage to somebody else, then revenge should be a real thing. But the chinuch says, no, everything's ordained from heaven. And the answer is everything is ordained from heaven. And even if somebody goes and uses their free will and puts you in a situation that you are not supposed to be in, at the bottom line is, if you had the merit, you would have been saved. So in essence, we have no one to blame other than ourselves. Everything, in essence, everything was the way that it should have happened. That's the way it did happen. But you did have the free will. And you did have the ability at the same point in time, free will, and you did have the ability. What are we talking about over here? The merit. Okay, I'm lost out here. I'm already 3 steps ahead of here. Okay, so now we have to understand the strength of free will. Free will is so powerful that it could genuinely alter a person's life. You could change a person's life completely. Now, granted, it was supposed to be based on a merit. Of course, everybody's in equal planes over here, but that's the power, that's the strength, of this. And we see over here an example for this in Sanhedrin, chapter 67b. There was this is not how the Gemara explains the story. I'm just going to explain it right now. I'm going to explain it in a very modern, comical way, but this is not how the Gemara explains it. But to say, there was a woman, a witch, that wanted to harm a big rabbi. And through sorcery. So the rabbi was like, what's up? Bring it on. He's like, go ahead. What you got? And the woman went, and what was his thought? The Gemara goes and asks, it says, a woman, these witches, they have the ability to go and alter things that were not meant to be. They have the ability to do that. So why would the rabbi going, yeah, bring it on? Why would you, and first of all, don't try this at home, right? Even if somebody right now is looking homeless, right? They're talking to their shoe, and they give a curse. You want to just stay. If they're like shooting curses out, even if they have a wand, and you just want to stay far away, you don't want to take any chances with these things. So what is this rabbi going and saying to a woman? Yeah, okay, fine. You know what the rabbi says? The rabbi says, "En od milvado." There is nothing other than God. So you can curse me from today to tomorrow. The only thing that's going to happen is only if it's ordained from God. But yet the rabbis ask, "Well, I don't understand." But a person's free will can alter that if a person has it. So it says this rabbi had the merit that he would have been able to withstand it. He had the merit to be able to withstand it. Only things that were ordained from God would have been actually happened. But anything else, not going to happen. Why? Because he was a rabbi that was a level that had the merit to do that. So we see over here something very, very important. That yes, your free will can affect somebody else. To the extent that it could alter that person's life, and that person, it was still deserving for that person to happen to it. These should both answer, clearly. And if it doesn't, then bear with me a few more minutes, and maybe this will give you some more clarity. The Ochot Tzadikim in Shal Simcha goes and says like this. He says that, I'm going to quote it for you. Remember that no benefit or damage ever occurs from people without the Creator's permission. This does not mean that we cannot affect each other. It simply means that we cannot affect each other without God's permission. So we could affect each other, but there has to be God's permission that's going on over here. Now this is how we can understand many, many aspects of the Torah. This is brilliant, and the more that you understand this, the more brilliant that everything just turns out to be. There's a Gemara in Bava Kama that says in page 68, that says that once the permission was been given to a destroyer to destroy, he does not distinguish between the righteous and the wicked. Which means is if there's a plague going on in a certain town, leave. Don't want to use your merits up to go over there. But why? Everything should be preordained. The answer is there's a certain level that it's sort of in the ear over there, and it depends on your merit. This is the idea that people ask, can a person die before their time? And the answer is yes. The Gemara over there in Bava Kama goes, and if you look at the Mefarshim over there, it says that death is possible before a person's time. If a person puts himself in a certain dangerous place, a person can bring the death on earlier than it was meant to be. The Ramchal, and I'm going to read this, in the 9th chapter, Mesilat Yesharim, goes and says like this: there is appropriate fear and foolish fear. There is confidence and recklessness. One who chooses not to be guided by wisdom and exposes himself to dangers is displaying not trust but recklessness. Some people think, I have emunah bitachon, let's go bungee jumping. You jump off a rubber band and expect it. Again, I'm not saying do it or not do it. We're not starting that. But when you're putting yourself in a situation, don't put yourself in a situation and say, I have complete faith in God and this is what's supposed to happen. Yes, you're supposed to have complete faith in God and everything that's supposed to happen should happen, but don't put yourself in a situation because it could be that you'll take yourself earlier than you were actually meant to be. Now this is how we understand the Gemara in Shabbat, page 32a. Migalgelin zechut al yedei zakai v'chova al yedei chayav. God goes and brings worthy people, brings good things to the worthy people and evil things to the wicked people. The idea is that, let's say something bad is supposed to happen to somebody. So who's going to be the one? You could say like, okay, this person Mr. A stole money from Mr. B. It was preordained, it had to happen. God said, no, it doesn't have to happen. Mr. B was supposed to lose the money. But who said you have to be the messenger? God goes, somebody who wants to do bad. The way that a person wants to go, that's the direction that the heaven decrees upon him. So somebody who wants to steal, somebody who wants to do bad things, you will have the opportunity to do it. God will present you those opportunities. You want to do good, you will be presented the opportunity to do good. It all depends on where you're holding. Stop blaming things on other people and God and no free will. You have solely the responsibility to do that. And now, that's why when bad things happen, both parties are really held liable for that thing. This side was supposed to happen. This side, who said you have to be the messenger? There could be somebody else. It didn't have to be you. It was never ordained, and we'll explain this soon by Egypt. But before we go that, we look at this and we look at the Gemara in Chulin, another Gemara in page 7b. It says, "Ein adam no kefetz ba'o milemata." A person cannot damage, cannot even bang his finger over here. Ela in ken machrizin alav milemala, unless it's decreed above, which means is every single suffering that you get in this world is completely from up above. So how could that be? How could somebody go and give me something that wasn't decreed already up above? And this also, we see over here also in Yosef. When Yosef said to his brothers, this is in Genesis chapter 45, he goes and Yosef said to his brothers, when they found out that, when he says, Ani Yosef, Odavichai, I'm Yosef, my father's alive, they felt really bad. He said, listen, God sent you here earlier so that I could go and I can make sure that there's enough food and, yada yada, the whole story over there. But I understand. It says, is it free will or is it not free will? Was it predestined or was it not to? We have over here also, another pasuk in Exodus, chapter 21, verse 12 to verse 13. It goes, it says, Makeh ish v'met mot yumat. If somebody kills somebody, then he's supposed to die. Rashi over there says something fantastic. He says something amazing over here. Everything Rashi is fantastic, but this is something that, at least I had personal enjoyment from it. I had personal enjoyment from all. Okay, fine. I'm kidding. The Rashi goes like this. It says there was what is this case referring to? There were two men who previously killed. One did on purpose, one did by accident. What happened? What did God do? God made a scenario happen. There was a person that was under a ladder, and there was a person on the top of the ladder. Now, when these two people killed previously, they did it without witnesses. So nobody saw, and there weren't, nothing happened. So what God orchestrated is something else. God orchestrated that somebody would be sitting on the bottom of the ladder, and somebody would be sitting on the top of the ladder. And the ladder on top goes and crashes on the guy below, and the guy below dies. And this was witnessed by two people. Who are the people? The guy on top, the guy who went and accidentally killed somebody again, that's the guy who accidentally killed somebody before. The guy who was on the bottom that was murdered, that's the guy who murdered somebody on purpose. His punishment is murder. God orchestrates everything that it should happen to make sure that it's supposed to happen the way that it does happen. Now let's explain the Egyptians, and then we're going to wrap everything up. The Egyptians, the question is over here. Was it decreed that the Jews are going to go to Egypt? Answer is yes. It says over there, that God already promised our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, your children are going to go to a strange land. They're going to be tortured. Everything was already preordained. So how can we punish the Egyptians? It was already meant to be. It was meant to be. It was a prophecy. If you have prophecies, how could the Holocaust wasn't meant to be? How could we go and punish the Nazis? Wasn't meant. How all these things are preordained. So how can we punish somebody for something that was already preordained? And the answer is that even though there was a prophecy that the Egyptians were supposed to do it, it never prophesied which Egyptian was supposed to do it. It never said, you were supposed to go and torture this person. The prophecy was there. But it was your free will to go and decide you want to be the messenger or you don't want to be the messenger.
Well, someone had to do it.
Somebody had to do it, yeah. Doesn't have to be you.
But then you don't really have free choice because it...
You're saying that they were able to go to Egypt but not suffer?
No, that was going to happen. The suffering was going to happen.
But it wasn't...
It was going to happen for somebody.
One person doesn't have free will because that one person...
You could relate to each one. Each one could play against each other. But the bottom line is they did have the free will not to do it. And they chose to do it.
If there's no chance, if it's supposed to happen, then there's no chance that that they're all going to not do it.
True. But the prophecy was, what you're saying is right. But the prophecy was, which means it was supposed to happen. So Egyptian, what's the Egyptian name? I don't know. Aziz, right? Gets up over there. I don't know. He gets up over there and he says, listen, God, what I was supposed to do it. And God says, no. You weren't supposed to do it. The decree was that it should happen, but I never said that you should do it. And he says, yeah, but it was supposed to happen. Be like, okay, that's my responsibility, says God, not yours.
That way, it's true, but that's great for the individual. But if everyone thought that way, then it would never happen.
Okay, granted. Then we would have been in a better place maybe, or a worse
No,
place.
it's supposed to happen.
Granted, you're right. But everybody is held liable for that reason.
But then there's no choice.
There is a choice. So there is a choice, but we're basing everybody on a one-on-one conversation over here. We're not basing we're not judging. God judges, what do we say? God judges people, kivnei malon, single file. What?
The point is we'll never understand because we can only understand on an individual level.
That's why one of the Rambam's answers, my opinion, is the greatest answer.
Because you can't say there's a decree for something, but there's no chance that no one's
So-
going to do it. Like, if
What you're saying is right. What you're saying is right, and it's very smart of you to have that conflict, which is true, and this is why the Rambam says it. But in essence, we do understand it. We do understand the basics of it. Let's go through. Let's open up. I want to go through all the questions that we had, answer it briefly, and then maybe put in I guess in a little bit of perspective and see if we get maybe a little bit more clarity. First, we asked, do we have free will? And the answer is we do. It's very obvious that we have free will. We're held liable for our actions. Furthermore, we need free will. Otherwise, if there's no free will, there's no point of anything. We're robots, there's no purpose of anything. We said also some people do not have free will, and we gave reasons mentally disabled, what the reasons that they don't have free will. Why do we have free will? The whole point of us being here is that we should have the free will to be able to go and be able to have a connection with God. Anything that we're doing here, there is a need for that. Now, that was the easy part. Now we said, if God knows the future, then how do we know? Then how do we have the free will? And the answer is that just because God, first of all, God's knowledge is not human knowledge. We only think that we know something, but the easiest answer, and the answer that I'm going to leave you off with in this question is, if I have a time machine, I go in the future, and I know what you're going to do, my knowledge doesn't change your action. You're still held liable for your action. Again, we gave different answers over there, but that's the brief one. We said, why does God test us if God knows the outcomes? God doesn't test us because God is like, I wonder what's going to happen over here. Eating popcorn and I'm wondering, let's see what's going to happen. God knows exactly what's going to happen. God tests us not for God to figure out, but for us to realize what our potential is going to be. And can our free will affect others? And we said 100% so. But if our free will can affect others, then is everything predestined? Is everything that's supposed to happen, supposed to happen to you? And the answer to both of them is yes. Everything that you have free will, that you could change and alter a person's life drastically. Even something that would not have been changed without you. That's how important it was. Was this? I think Rav Nachman Bessa said this. It says that something, and I'm going to misquote it a little bit just because I'm doing it from memory. The day that you were born, God realized that the world cannot exist without you. That's a phenomenal thing, that we can make serious changes in this world. We have some serious changes in this world. So if we have the ability to do this also we have to realize this does not change anything, and this does not change any concept on things that is predestined. Because everything that's supposed to happen to you will happen to you. Nobody can harm you if they're not allowed to. There is a little bit of an open there, but anything that happens to you means that they had the ability to do it. The greater merit that you have, the greater protection that you have, obviously, as well. But free will exists, and everything that's supposed to happen is going to happen. Do you understand that? It's a very, very important aspect. I want to do B'ezrat Hashem, in the near future. I want to do a Muna series on, how do we understand the Muna. But this is a very, very important, concept to understand as is. Now, okay, one more thing. How could we have free will? How could we get punished for something if everything was supposed to happen either way? And this is the part that you had the questions on, and this is the part that you had, we had some problems with. So, if something is supposed to happen, the easiest way to understand it is it was going to happen. This person was going to get murdered. He was going to get shot in the head. That's for sure. That's how this person is going to die. But you didn't have to be the messenger. Now, granted, somebody else could have been the messenger, should have been the messenger, would have been the messenger. You cannot go. You can't go. It doesn't work even in this court. Let's say you go and you go into a bank, and there's a wad of hundreds sitting on the floor, wrapped up, bank stamped, and everything. And you go and you pick it up and you leave. Now, I don't know the law, but it would appear to me it would be problematic. The security cameras are not going to be like, well, finders keepers, losers rippers, They're going to be like, what's going on here? Why did you take it? And you left. And are you going to be able to say, well, if I wasn't going to do it, somebody else was going to do it? They're like, no, that doesn't work that way. You can't. You're going to be held liable for your actions, what you do. And that's how we have to realize it, that even though something is supposed to happen, it's preordained that it should happen, you're still liable, because who said that you had to be the messenger? So you still have the free will for that. Okay, questions. Shoot them. I guess let's work counterclockwise. Okay. Clockwise for you.
The thing about getting out of a danger based on merit, but what about someone, for example, Ari Fol, the man who was in Jerusalem who was killed, he was big pro-Israel and had an observant family. What about that where like some people were saying that he was protecting someone, that's why he died instead. But like, what about a situation like that where like?
So when you're dealing in general, whenever you're dealing with those type of sensitive situations, the real answer is we don't know. We don't know what God's plan was. We don't know the reason. We don't know the behind. We don't know. We know nothing. That's how much we know. We know zero. We can't. Those things, especially, one of the worst things that someone can say in like a shiva house, something like that, in a very drastic thing. Well, it was supposed to happen anyways, At least he did it saving his country. No, that type of person should stop going to visit shiva houses and probably, start practicing. There's people that say, silly things, in certain times. There are certain things that we say, we understand this concept in a blanket thing. How we plug this into a particular state, how somebody died a very drastic death. Should have this happened? Could this not have happened? Could he have avoided it?
It's like based on merit, but like if someone, was like so great, like he was, like why did he have to die? Like, is it, maybe, eventually it's inevitable death, but like,
why did he have to?
Such a way?
Right. So again, we don't know the reason. Now, when we said that he had merit, this person would have merit only in a sense if they had if they were signed in Rosh Hashanah. That let me explain your question, and then let me explain it. So sometimes I keep on forgetting. Sometimes people tell me on the online world that people don't hear the questions; they just hear the answers. They're trying to figure it out. So the question is like this: let's say you have a righteous person that died a very, very brutal death. We're not going to use an example, but the example that you used, a very recent case. I don't know if the audio caught in there. If it did, it did. If it didn't, it didn't. But somebody that let's say it's a righteous person, did a good thing, always good, had a family, came and murdered, brutally. How do we answer that in this type of situation? Do we say that he did not have enough merit? But he obviously must have had enough merit if he was a very righteous person. How could we say that he didn't have enough merit? So first of all, we have to understand that let's look at the books written in the Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, if it was written that this person was supposed to live, nothing would have happened to him. If this person was written that he was supposed to die, merit's not going to help. It was his time. Granted, the only time where merit is going to make a difference is if something is left open. And that sometimes happens. It's left open. God says, for this scenario, let's see, merit, no merit, it depends on your merit. So this is his situation. We don't know because we're not God judging it. But that will be able to give you a little bit of understanding on where you can put your focus on and where you can say, like, listen, maybe we could say that it was his time, maybe it wasn't. Who are we to say? But some clarification.
Now, another situation would be like, what about the case of something happening to a child, sexual abuse, that's a big hot topic in our country now. Something for a child who you said they don't really
have free will.
Yeah. But something's happening to them. Do they know how to escape it? Do they not know? Does it happen? They let it happen.
So you're saying, does the person who abused the child have free will to abuse the child?
What about the child? So because it's a child, there's an age cutoff for free will, no free will. Is that
Well, the child itself
had no free will, so it's
right. So we don't obviously this is very obvious. We never any abuse situation. We never hold the child responsible, right. No matter how bratty or however. We never hold the child responsible. We hold the accuser, the person that did it. Now, if your question is, can that person abuse a child without having it ordained? Is that what your question is? Without having?
I'm really not sure because what's the what is the age? What's considered a child? Okay, they don't have free will to escape it, to fight it off, or and what is they're old enough they should have been able to use their judgment. So first of all, when you're dealing emotional sexual abuse, any of these types of abuses, they're really victims, and even adults that are stuck in this, you can never judge them. They should have fight it off. These, you should never know from these things but I've been involved. These people they get so emotionally stuck in a situation. They don't even have the ability to fight off sometimes. They're just stuck in a very, very bad situation. And you need a lot of, you even just need a lot of merit just to be able to fight that off. So it's a very, very sticky situation and a hard situation. We can never judge somebody, obviously the people that committed those things have to get, and by the way, if anybody knows of any abusive, that has to be told authorities right away. There's no okay, we shouldn't tell. No, we're supposed to tell the authority. Any of these type of situations need to be, obviously if you want, you can speak to your rabbi, but that's what your rabbi is going to tell you. There are also situations that would be written in the book in Rosh Hashanah, this is going to happen to this.
Yes, can you say that this child was already predestined, that something bad was supposed to happen to him? Yeah, it can be. Only God knows. We don't know. I could just tell you the formulas. The actual numbers that get put in there, only God knows. Nobody could go and tell you, yeah, this was ordained, this was not, this was supposed to be, this was not supposed to be. We can't even, these type of situation, it's not healthy to look that way. It's not how what we have to look at it, because you're going to start thinking things that's going to just drive you crazy. The way that we have to look at these situations is a very, very unfortunate thing happened. It happened. We have to deal with it from here. Why did it happen? We could start figuring out to prevent it from happening again. But start judging that person and like, did you have enough merit? Did you not have enough merit? We cannot do that. We never know. We never know the merits of the people or any aspect of anything, in fact. Any other question? Okay, you had questions.
Yeah, it's along the lines of merit. I understand not judging other people because we never know, but for ourselves, like I feel like it's a little bit, I mean, obviously it's not contradictory, but in my understanding, it feels a little bit contradictory to living with Emunah. And because it, like let's say even like walking around in Israel, walking around in Yerushalayim, okay? Safe, relatively safe place, like if you, it's dangerous. So what are you supposed to say if it's a time of stabbings, and if it's a time of whatever? Like, you're supposed to like not go out, or you're supposed to be like, Hashem's with me. Like, every bullet has a destination.
I hear your question, and that's what I was trying to avoid, because it's a very fine line, and it's not really, it's a very thick line, but it's hard to grasp that understanding. So if everything is predetermined, then or if everybody has free will, then what is Emunah? And that's why I mentioned specifically that I'm going to make a class on Emunah to try to explain this. But yeah, for living your daily life, the more Emunah that everything is from God. Let's just start off with that. Everything that happens to you is from God. Everything. There's everything that's preordained. How much money you can make? We're gonna, I plan on expanding on this. This is just part one of free will. We're gonna have to do another part, to go a little bit more in depth in this. But to understand the idea that a person has free will and everything still happens from God. Now, as conflicting as those things sound, they're both 100% solid on their own standing. So yeah, if you're in a situation where it's, you need Emunah, I don't know, you're in Israel and you're walking around, you have to live your life. And you have to live your life based off what the rabbis say. So if, let's say, you go to the rabbis, and a lot of, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, they were asked in previous words, should we live Israel, should we not live Israel? If he says you don't have to leave Israel, you don't have to leave Israel. You have faith, nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing.
Unless it's supposed to.
Well, if he gives you, and if he says you stay over here, right? Then he says those are particular cases. I'll tell you. And I'll give you an example. Let me give you a specific. I had and this happened many times in the wars. They went over to the biggest rabbi, or one particular person says, my parents want me to go back. They're from America, they're going to Israel. My parents want me to go back to Israel. They're nervous about what's going to happen. The rabbi says, one of the biggest rabbis in the world says, stay over here, nothing's going to happen. You stay over there, nothing's going to happen to you. Right? It's just not going to happen. That's the way. And, I've been to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky numerous times. I've heard stories, from him. This guy, nothing's going to happen. So there is a level of faith that you are able to have. Obviously, this is where you go and you ask your rabbis. But if you're, I don't know, if you're skipping rocks in the Gaza border and you're like, Emunah, everything's supposed to happen. Like, no, once you hit Mahmoud in the head, he's not gonna be like, Emunah. Okay, fine. You put yourself in a situation, you can't put the. But even that is still from God. Even that. But again, sometimes it's your consequences. Sometimes it's because of your fault that you did it. You put yourself in that situation. A very hard concept. I know.
Yeah, like even like Israel's like such a specific thing, but like on like a day-to-day life, like this whole class is more conceptual to understand questions, but like you're still supposed to live with Emunah. You're not supposed to be
100%.
Your own zukuyot and like whether
yes.
or whatever.
You're 100% correct. And if I didn't make that clear, you still have to live with emunah and faith in God, that everything that happens directly is from God. You cannot stop and trying to figure out, maybe this, maybe that. However, where does this come into play? Because this comes into play not only theoretical, very, very practical, which is why I brought up the chinuch. The chinuch says like this: what about revenge? You cannot. If someone has free will, then why should you ever take revenge? I know, because ultimately, even if somebody did something to you, the only way they would have been able to do that is only if they got the okay from heaven, and you didn't have the merit to have that. So two ways we have to take this two things. Yeah, you need merit in this world. You can't. If somebody goes, and I'll give you an example like this. Let's say somebody doesn't want to work, so he sits home and watches TV all day. Emunah from today till tomorrow, they're not doing what they're supposed to. Now, granted, maybe God will, maybe God won't, but we can't rely on that. On him sending him panasah, sending him his wife, sending him, the husband. If somebody does, you need merit for everything. Everything you could have emunah from today till tomorrow. The greater the merit that you have, the less work that you'll have to do, the more emunah that you'll have. Obviously, emunah itself is merit, but you definitely you cannot live this life without merit. You need zchuyot. This is where you get judged every Rosh Hashanah.
But that's not for us to worry about how much merit we have.
We have to worry about becoming a good person.
Right.
We can't start checking off how much merit because we don't know the reward for anything.
Practically, like what we're really working on is emunah, not necessarily worrying about our zechuyot. It's just about
We're working about two things.
Trusting that everything is from Hashem.
Right. There's two things. Number one, we got to do what we're supposed to do from the Torah, and number two, we have to trust in Hashem.
And everything will fall into place after.
Yeah. I'll get to you afterwards. You had also a question?
No, I have just some things to add. First of all, in regards to what you said, abuse and all those things. So it can be like gilgulim, it can be a tikkun.
Yeah.
This is all like much deeper things that some things from previous lives and whatever things you do. And with the zchuyot also, we always daven to have the zchuyot and imaot, and we always the constant davening of it, even in our haftarot and everything. We
Right.
always like to mention it, so it should be a merit.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point. We always need merit, and the reincarnation. I actually was thinking about that. I didn't want to bring it up, but if you brought it up, so some people, even as little kids, go through certain things, and we don't know. We don't know this. It's a very iffy subject, but it could be for a previous life. Now, I'm going to say something. I'm probably going to, not the best for people to, easiest thing for people to understand, and we don't understand this thing, but it could be, and I'm not saying it's always like this, somebody that gets abused as a child, it's very possible in a previous life that child was an abuser. Now, I'm not saying that automatically happens. There's many, factors that come into play over here. So we can't say that every child that gets abused is their fault because that's what's happening. We don't know. But I'm saying it is possible. Only God knows. But the one thing we know is that everything does happen for a reason. But at the same point in time, everyone does have free will. And back again. Okay. And you had a thing? But thank you very much. Excellent points.
Is it like really so black and white? Do you have like maybe some free will?
You mean do you have some lack of free will?
Like, in general, in terms of like mental things, also like mental disabilities, like a spectrum.
There is, because some people.
Children, like it's not like you hit bar mitzvah.
Yeah, it's true, and even there, in nowadays and age, there's a lot of emotional instability. So there's some people that at one point in life can have free will, and another point in life cannot have free will anymore. They sort of snap and they go through something. And I don't want to get into it, but the whole thing with suicide: does a person have the free will? Isn't they in the right mind? There's a lot. You're right. There's a wide spectrum, and that's why we don't judge. We can never judge. Only God can judge for these things.
Isn't that a point where we kind of have to accept kind of the biology and the science behind it? Like the man who kind of wandered into this room before we started, or the man we saw outside. There's a gentleman I see a lot during Shabbos, like kind of wandering and screaming at the sky. Like, is it because they had no free will their whole life, or they did and then something happened?
It's possible. Regardless, whichever way you look at it, we can't judge them. We don't know.
And there's nobody is to step in and like help guide them. Like,
of course they should.
Right
No, of course you should help. You shouldn't be like, hey, this is New York. I'm not seeing anything. Don't see, don't tell. It's like somebody who gets shot and there's a witness. Be like, I saw nothing. Like you don't worry about anything. And you robbed him. Whatever. Do what you got to do. No. I mean, obviously you try to help. As much as you can. Especially somebody who doesn't have the free will. Especially if somebody in that situation. But what I'm saying is, you cannot judge a person because you don't know.
No, you don't want to. I mean, that's a little wrong to judge them for that. But it's like, so is it our? Now it's our free will to like help them.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why a lot of these situations you see people that are not 100%, maybe 90, 95, maybe 80. I don't know, depending on how you rate people. But for some people, everybody's 50%. It's incumbent on those people. They come and they're talking to you, and you don't want to talk to them. Because they're going to, just tell you their life story and you're not interested. But, what will be right, and again, obviously if you're able to, is they need, what you're doing something is you're utilizing your free will to help them just by listening or guiding them or whatever it is, of course. And you should do that. Any other questions?
For the merit though, let's say Yosef, when he was by the animal, even if he was saved, then his merit would have maybe possibly, I don't know how much he had, maybe used up, and then...
So it's an excellent point. So when you put yourself in a dangerous situation, you can use up your merits. If you put yourself, so you will get saved, but you'll use up your merits. maybe I'll speak about this more in detail on a different thing, but that's when you put yourself in a situation, not if somebody places you in that situation. Now you will use it up, per se.
But I'm saying, like, on one hand, someone could say, oh yeah, I'm gonna use this and then I could go get more later, but like if I'm safe in the situation.
I don't know, I mean, this is not topping up, this is not like filling up in gas, but I'm saying like we don't know. Be like, all right, I'll do this bad thing now, but then I'll do a really good thing tomorrow to, increase my reward.
I know I did this and yeah, I'm in this bad situation, but I know I can do that, like, I don't know how many more times, and then, like, could someone use that rationale, because then, it's going to sound like really I had more merit if I got myself out of the situation with merit than in the first place?
I don't think I'm following it, but I'll tell you like this.
If you use merit, let's say you have this much merit and you use it up so then you could get that much, are you allowed to do that?
Oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. So, in short, the answer is no. And I'll give you a basic, you cannot put yourself in danger you should not put yourself in danger to save somebody else, if that's what you're asking. Now, this goes on, this is not for a topic now, but like, let's say, somebody puts a gun to your head, saw off your leg, or I'm going to kill this person. You don't have to saw off your leg for that.
But if they say eat a cheeseburger?
You eat the cheeseburger.
But if they say bow down to an idol, you don't.
Okay, that's right. So that's where we're going. Yeah, right.
Okay. Also with the love and the fear that you were saying, but what about the concept of Stockholm syndrome, where someone ends up like loving their captor or whatever it is, then they do end up loving them, but initially they were terrified of them because like I'm captured. In no normal sense is that real love. That might be fear and awe, and might be honor or like that, but there's no love. You cannot love somebody unless, but granted, it could come to a certain point that they, out of their free will, they decide to love that person for whatever twisted reason it could be. If they're loving them, then it's their own free will.
Well, that's a very twisted situation because, and I have to look at it more from a scientific perspective or more from a psychological perspective, but I wouldn't say that that's real love, just off the top of my head. I don't know. Nothing is black and white, except for paper. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I'll get. Okay. I guess which. Go. Same time. And I was kidding. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll go. She's gonna wait anyways. No, I was saying yeah.
Are non-Jewish people also included in the free will?
Yes.
They don't get judged.
They do get judged. They do get judged, but not to a lesser extent. So they do also have free will. Non-Jews also have free will. Yep. Same thing.
Same way affecting Jews, the same way affecting.
Yep. You have a question? For off camera. Any other questions for on camera? Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if that's on camera.
Okay, let's do the other one. Maybe people.
Does it say anywhere clearly in the Torah that animals don't have free will?
Does it say anywhere? You're talking about a pasuk straight out, like
is it?
And the animal.
I think that people assume that. I naturally assume that, but is there somewhere I can source it? I can back
Where's the citation? It's an environmental thing, such as the Stockholm syndrome, where it's like they're trained to think this way at some point.
Yeah, people will defend.
Yeah, the source is this.
Science,
it's based off Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 29. The Ramban, Nachmanides over there goes and explains it, and he says over there that he says like this. He says, "Shebalei nefesh," the animals, they have a little bit of I don't want to say free will, but they have a little bit. They have elementary free will. They have the ability to look for food and when to run from pain and death.
Yeah.
So, but there's an elementary thing. But the source for that is the Rambam and Nachmanides in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29.
But do they have a choice to choose between this animal and that animal? That's not good.
But there's instinct and then there's.
I don't know. If they're in the mood of Bambi, I think they're going to go for something. I don't know. I've never tasted the meat, so I can't. So does that answer?
It's instinct versus what's.
There is instinct, but there is a little bit of a minor elementary, almost like nothing of a free will, like sort of like what you speak to, like you guys deal with angels, but for different topic and stuff. Any other questions? Okay, Hazakabo.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.